What up, lovely people? This your boy Bradford Lassiter, aka Big Brad the Rock, and I decided to give you another double feature review because I'm kind of late in getting my review of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Out of the Shadows out. And at this very moment when I'm making this video, I literally just came up from seeing the Conjuring 2, so I decided, I'll combine those two reviews together to bring you a double feature review. So let's get right into it. Starting with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Out of the Shadows. And it is the sequel to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie that came out a couple of years ago in 2014, and a lot of people were pretty much split down the middle with that movie. Either you liked it or you didn't like it. Me, I'm more pretty much in the kind of like it, because to me, like the Ninja Turtle movie that came out a couple of years ago, I feel like it knew what it was, and it knew that some people, it wasn't going to appeal to a lot of people, preferably all the nostalgic people of the 90s Ninja Turtle movie. And it particularly just wasn't for us. It was for the new generation so that they could appreciate it. And if you so happen to like it, that's awesome. So I kind of went into this movie with that same approach because honestly, all you fanboys, how can you really expect a compelling story about four talking turtles that are named after Renaissance artists that are raised and trained by a talking rat to learn ninjutsu and fight a villain that's named after a kitchen utensil who so happens to have two henchmen that happen to be giant talking rhinoceros or warthog? Seriously, how can you? But in any case, that doesn't mean that this is a perfect movie, though. I do like it for what it is. So, I'm gonna just say it like this. Again, I went into this movie expecting no more, no less, and just went into this movie to expect to have a great time. And this movie did have some fan service than it did in the last movie, and it pretty much any problem you have with the last movie, they pretty much fixed in this. This movie had a lot of fan service for sure, and they had a lot more turtles in this movie than they did in the last movie. Because the problem with the last movie, it was too centered around the humans and didn't focus more on the turtles. In this movie, they did focus more on the turtles, and I guess to that is because in this movie they were able to have a bigger budget, so they could afford to have more motion capture for the Ninja Turtles. And in this movie, the Ninja Turtles, while they are pretty much rewarded for what they did in the first movie, but they're still behind closed doors. And Will Arnett's character, he takes credit for what they did because they don't know how the humans are going to react to them, and so it's pretty much just them trying to come out of the shadows and try to be in the human world. Some of the turtles are cool with that, some of them are not cool with that, and you get to see those conflicting personalities conflict with each other. And at the same time, a new threat comes along, in the threat of Krang. And that's all I'm going to say on that portion of the story. And we still get Shredder. We get more of him, and he's more human than he was in the last movie. But I feel like he was kind of a bit wasted towards the end of the movie. The action in this movie is just as good as it was in the last movie, though I do feel like most of the action in this movie was a bit of a CGI fest, which is one of my negatives about this movie, is that it is a big CGI fest, especially in the climax of this movie. They were able to get less Will Arnett in this movie, but, it doesn't always work out. Megan Fox returns again as April O'Neil, and I feel like they gave her a little bit more to do in this movie, but she was still kind of a, I guess, sexual object in this movie, and she was just there for visual appeal, nothing more, nothing less. But I still appreciate the fact that they gave her more to do as the role of April O'Neil, so, Again, I said Shredder was kind of wasted. I really mean he takes a backseat in this movie. He's just doing nothing more than plotting, and then at the end of the movie, he gets pretty much sidelined. Stephen Amell himself, Arrow, he plays Casey Jones, and I'm kind of in the middle with him because either he was the wrong person to play Casey Jones or he was the right person to play Casey Jones, and they just illustrated the character of Casey Jones in this movie. But otherwise, I feel like Casey Jones was a negative in this movie because I feel like they didn't really put Casey Jones to the Casey Jones that we know and love. And, the Casey Jones that we had in the old movies, he was a little bit more scruff and rough and he pretty much was on the streets as well. And this guy, it's just a pretty face, and just didn't really he just didn't really fit the part of Casey Jones. But again, I feel like Stephen Amell, he probably could play a good Casey Jones, just not the Casey Jones that he played in this movie. Bebop and Rocksteady are in this movie, and the two of them are just a bunch of bubbling idiots, and yeah, they didn't really add nothing to them. And it was great to see them for the first time on the screen, though, but I feel like it wasn't really worth it. And my last negative about this movie is Tyler Perry. In the trailers, it made it seem like he's just going to be nothing more but a cartoon in this movie. And after seeing the movie, yeah, it is justified. He is just a fucking cartoon in this movie. Seriously, I thought he was on the right track with movies like Gone Girl. But I was wrong, and he's taking a step back, and I'm definitely not looking forward to Boo, a Madea movie. Well, I wasn't planning on seeing that movie anyway, but it just feels like Tyler Perry, now he's starting to take a step back. Just when I thought that he's starting to do good, and he's just, come on, please. I don't know what to say for you, Tyler Perry. In the end, could Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Out of the Shadow could have been a better movie? Yes. But again, I feel like this lore is too ridiculous to really make a compelling story, and at this point, come on, y'all. We all know what it is, and we're not really expecting much from it. You're just here for the silliness and for the love of the turtles, and if they have some nostalgic moments in the movie for you, then you're here for that. So nothing more, nothing less. And so otherwise, you know what you're getting in this movie, and if you're just going in this movie expecting a good time, just with some nostalgia and having a good time with the Turtles, and especially way more Turtles than we got in the first movie, and if you're pretty much under the age of 12 and loves the Ninja Turtles, then you will enjoy this movie. But if you're looking for a little more than that, then this ain't the movie for you. Otherwise, I guess I will say I will give Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3 stars for room for improvement. And then next up we have The Conjuring 2. And it is a sequel to the first Conjuring, in which I absolutely love. It was one of my favorite films of 2013, and I feel like it was one of the better horror movies that I've seen in the past couple of years. And it's one of the best horror directors, let alone best working directors in the business right now, James Wan, who had just given us Furious 7 last year, and I was absolutely impressed with what he did to action. And of course, he's a good horror director, and I can't wait to see what else he ventures out into next, especially with him being eyed to direct the Aquaman movie. But James Wan returns by giving us The Conjuring 2, in which in this movie, you know, The Conjuring is about Ed and Lorraine Warren, who are real-life paranormal investigators, and that's one of the things I loved about the first Conjuring. While it does have some cliche horror movie tropes in it, I still feel like it was a well-directed, well-crafted movie about real people, and that's really what hooked me with the first Conjuring, because it was based on real people that actually investigated stuff like this, and that's what hooked me. And so I was excited when I heard that they were making a Conjuring 2, because I'm not much of a horror guy, but I can enjoy a good horror film every now and then. I'm more into psychological horror, but again, I can enjoy a good horror movie, especially with this one. And again, when I heard that they were making a sequel, I couldn't wait, because I rarely see horror movies in theaters, and so I couldn't wait to see this in theaters and get scared the shit out of. And boy, did this movie scare the shit out of me. But in The Conjuring 2, there's this family that's being terrorized by this entity, and this entity has latched itself to this little girl. And so Ed and Lorraine Lauren, they go over to London to pretty much investigate to make sure either A, make sure this isn't a hoax, and B, if this is a real thing, so they can take care of it. Now, earlier I said The Conjuring is one of my favorite horror films in the past couple of years, and one of my favorite horror films of all time. Well, I can definitely say with confidence that The Conjuring 2 is better than the first Conjuring. Seriously, I just love, I feel like this movie, it just built upon the last movie and just made everything better than the first movie. And what I loved about this movie is how the tension just builds up to the scare. And it really scares the shit out of you without relying on blood and gore and jump scares. While there is jump scares in this movie, but it's not solely reliant on it, and they do the jump scares right. But another reason why I feel like this movie is better than the first one, because I feel like it is a well-crafted, well-acted, and well-written movie. And by well-crafted, again, this movie is directed by James Wan, and he really knows how to direct horror. And I cannot, this guy has a bright future ahead of him, and I can't wait to see what he does next, not only in horror, but outside the horror genre. And the acting in this movie is great. Like, the little girl in this movie, she carried most of this movie, and she carried it well. And of course, we got Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga, who plays Ed and Lorraine Lauren, who are real people. And I just every time they're on screen, I just fall in love with them, because I actually believe that these are real people and they go through stuff like this. But at the same time, they maintain that humanity, and you really believe them, and they're legitimately married people. And again, another thing I loved about this movie is it's grounded in reality, and these are real people, and they deal with stuff like that, and they try to maintain their humanity and maintain their relationship and marriage life. And it makes up for some very heartfelt moments within the film that I felt grounded the story and kind of takes away from all the craziness that's happening in the movie. But another thing that I felt like this movie was grounded in reality because, Ed and Lorraine Lauren, they're relatively known by a lot of people and they investigate a lot of things. So people known about the cases they've investigated, and because of that, people tend to pretty much build off of that and try to get rich off of that and create hoaxes off of that. And so whenever stuff like this comes up, they're trying to make sure it's not a hoax and make sure these are legitimate cases where stuff is actually happening, because that was one of the tensions with the case they're dealing with in this movie, then, is to make sure that they can get some hard evidence that this family is really being terrorized. And I just felt like that was just great writing on James Wan and whoever else wrote this movie on their part. And again, the acting in this movie is just really, really great. Like, you really feel for this family, and you just hope that this family gets through it and that they can get the proof that they need to just get themselves out of this situation and that this whole fiasco stopped for them. And I said it's well crafted. Like, there's just one scene where Patrick Wilson, he's communicating with one of the ghosts, and it's just all one long shot. And halfway through, I'm just like, we're still on this same shot. And just the way he did that shot, I was just like, I was in awe. Guys, in the end, The Conjuring 2 is not only one of the best horror films I've seen in a long time, but it is better than the first Conjuring, and that's saying a lot. Even better than Annabelle. Well, I don't think anyone really speaks of Annabelle, because like Annabelle, like, I didn't hate Annabelle, but at the same time I felt like it was just too much of a step down to be as good, if not better, than The Conjuring. With this movie, I felt like they just took it to a whole nother level with crafting the horror and the scares, and the acting and the writing of this movie was just perfect in any way. So because of that, I'm gonna do it. I'm giving The Conjuring 2 5 stars, for it's a masterpiece. It's because a guy like me, who's not much of a horror fan, is why I had so much fun with this movie, because this movie was just well made, well acted, and well written, and it actually legitimately scared the shit out of me in this movie, is why I gave it 5 stars, and it's a masterpiece. I legitimately have fun with this movie, and James Wan continues to show how to really make a horror film. That's it for the day. Have you seen any of these two movies? Let me know. Did you like them? Let me know in the comment section below. And if you like this video, go ahead and hit that thumbs up button. And if you want to see more, check out my channel. The link is in the description below. And be sure to check me out on Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, Instagram, Movie Pilot, and Periscope. Peace.